Don't touch that dial. You're tuned in to the Dread Podcast Network.
Welcome to Development Hell. For every horror movie that hits V.O.D, countless others end up D.O.A. Development Hell is the podcast dedicated to unearthing these cursed horror productions. We're going to find out what went wrong, and then decide if these titles still stand a shot at the green light. I am your host, Josh Corngut. I am a filmmaker in Toronto, Canada. This podcast is a proud member of the Dread Podcast Network. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to a brand new episode of Development Hell. We've been offline for a couple of weeks because I was sick. Big apologies. I missed you, and now I am back. And today, we have a topic that I've been itching to do for a really long time. We're talking about I Know What You Did Last Summer, but not just classic I Know What You Did Last Summer. We're going to be talking about Mike Flanagan's unmade 2016-ish reboot of this classic neo-slasher. We have a returning guest judge today. Please welcome back Jinx. Jinx, how's it going?
I've been in this damn dungeon for months, Josh.
God, I'm sorry. I've been busy. It totally slipped my mind. But you look good. You must be like just rats or shit. You're eating, so that's good.
I heard you coughing upstairs, and I was glad you were sick.
Oh, you don't mean that, Jinx. I'm not going to take that personally. Guys, he's just tired. He's hungry. But we're back. And I think that we're both going to have a good time talking about I Know What You Did Last Summer today. And then maybe we'll talk about letting you out. I totally forgot that you were down there, and that's my bad. That's on me. And I can take accountability. Jinx, I've missed you. I know that maybe you're feeling your feelings right now, but I'm just wondering if you could do me the favor of reintroducing yourself to the Development Hell audience.
If I pretend to be chipper and get through one more of these, acting as though I'm enjoying it, will you let me out?
Definitely. Absolutely. Yes.
All right, well, here it goes. Hey, Josh, how's it going? Thanks so much for having me back. I very much appreciate it and can't wait to dive in.
I love it. Thank you, Jinx. You're always such a team player, and that's what we appreciate about you. Yeah, so as I mentioned, today we're talking about Mike Flanagan's I Know What You Did Last Summer reboot. And my first question for you and for me and for everyone at home is, what was your first contact with I Know What You Did Last Summer? What was the beginning of your I Know journey?
Oh, Josh, okay, I know that you asked that question thinking that this is probably going to be a brief enough answer, but you're going to have to pull up a chair if you want me to answer honestly.
I'm ready. I'm waiting. I'm here.
Okay, so I Know What You Did Last Summer and we have a history at Nye. IKWYDLS and me, we probably got acquainted after I heard that the guy who wrote Scream back in the day had a brand new movie coming out. And I just couldn't wait. I was a huge Scream fan. Still am. I love those 4 movies. All 4 of them.
4 movies?
Yeah.
Is that I'm not exactly sure which one you're leaving out, but I'm assuming the new one.
Yeah, I mean, there's Scream, Scream 2,
God.
Scream 3, and then Wes Craven's final movie, Scream 4. And, it's a great franchise.
Controversial queen. Interesting. Okay. So, yes, Kevin Williamson extravaganza. Very exciting. Yeah.
And, I was reading in the pages of Fangoria back in the day that Williamson had this movie coming up called I Know What You Did Last Summer. And even better, like I was such a nerd, I was such a nerd back in the day that I would scour magazines like Entertainment Weekly and Fangoria and anything of the sort for any I would go to movie theaters and look in the credits blocks of movie posters. I'm not making this up, to see if any of the films that were coming up or that were out were based on pre-existing material. And then I would run to my local Walden Books. I'm totally dating myself with that name, but my local Walden Books, and I would seek out that book and read it. So
Okay.
the idea that the guy who wrote Scream was writing another slasher movie and it was based on a book, I was over the
Mhm.
moon. So I got to my local Walden Books and I put in an order for Lois Duncan's I Know What You Did Last Summer. I got it in a few days later and I read it and I absolutely loved it. But I thought, I was like, wait, number one, this is not a slasher story.
No.
Number two, how the hell do you do that ending on film? And the
Yeah.
answer is you don't.
You don't.
But I loved it. I absolutely adored that book. And then when the movie came out, it took me about 5 or 6 minutes into the film to realize that the movie was not going to be the book, that these were all the same characters, thankfully, but it was
Mhm.
a new kind of situation. It was going to be a new villain. It was going to be a new look, new feel. It was going to be a slasher. And I just kind of rolled with it. And I got to tell you, I absolutely adored the film, so much so
Mhm. Mhm.
that I I adored the movie, I adored the book, and when I was in the position to, I pitched my high school during my senior year.
Oh my
I
god.
pitched them on the idea of writing the school play. And they were like, okay, what do you want to do? And I was like, I want to base it on this book. And I was like, everybody knows the movie. I want to do the book. And I leaned hard on the idea that, so clearly the kids were drinking and driving, and this is all about the fallout of
Cautionary tale,
that. Like,
cautionary
drinking
tale.
and
Okay.
driving is bad, you know.
No good.
And so I pushed that aspect of it, and they were like, okay, great. So I wrote like this weird fusion where it was an adaptation of the book, but it was an adaptation of the movie.
No.
The fisherman's hook figured into it, but there was no fisherman. The ending of Lois Duncan's book was actually accounted for by splitting the two personalities of the one guy that he pretends to be into two separate characters, so that there are two
Uh-huh.
killers at the ending, much like Scream. And
Whoa.
we were going to do it. It was going to be a thing. I actually, I was having a poster made up. I'd snapped pictures of the cast. We had rehearsed. Everybody really dug it.
Cool.
And then the teacher that we were working with, who was over that department,
No.
was just such a fucking monster.
No.
Okay, let me take it back. Let me take it back. Let me take it back. I'm going
No.
too far. In the interest of being honest, she wasn't a monster,
No,
but
she
it was
is.
just we butted heads 1,000 too many times over certain aspects of it, to the point where I was like, you know what? I can't, in all honesty, I can't do this anymore. And so I left. But when I left, the rest of the cast left with me. So there was no school play in
Oh my god.
1999. Yeah. So I literally, I created the play and then I tanked the play, and I can't imagine that school ever allowed another student to take a whack at writing their school play. So that's my bad, Green. My apologies. But
Jinx, that's a fucking incredible story on all accounts. I can't believe I haven't heard it yet, but I guess we haven't done the subject.
I was such a nerd that not only did I write the play, not only did I write that fusion, not only did I do all of that, but I even wrote the William Castle, the burgeoning William Castle nerd in me, even as a teenager, wanted to do, for showmanship, purely just doing something silly to have people really dig it. I wrote two separate endings for the school play,
Genius.
and depending on which showing, like, people would check out, because we were going to do like a, not just for the school, but we were going to do a running thing for a couple of nights. And maybe, yeah, the kids' parents would show up and watch it, maybe the community would show up and watch it. But the idea is that, okay, if you show up on one night, we're going to have one ending, but if you show up on another night, we're going to have a completely different ending. And don't you want to see them all, folks? So
That's great. Wow, you had creative integrity as a child, and I don't think anyone else can claim that. So I think that's fucking great. Do you still have it? Do you think? Could you still find it?
Okay, so yes, I do. Unfortunately, it is in a box somewhere. I did
Okay.
come across, I recently went through a bunch of stuff that I have in boxes up north in a storage unit, and I
Okay.
found it. I found that
You
copy of that
fucking
script, and I
found
was
it.
like, you've got to be kidding me. And I did look through it, and I was like, you know what, though? Like, I was looking through it, and I was like, Okay, some of this is really, really not good. Like,
Oh
and
my god.
clearly I did not understand how plays are
We were a
supposed to work
kid.
because I had seen changes like every 5 pages, and I'm like, that's a whole lot of closing the curtain. That's a whole lot of this and that. Like,
That's fun.
it would have been a
I
disaster. But some of it, I was like, you know what? I think I figured out a pretty damn neat way to realize Lois Duncan's ending
bet you did.
and make it work.
Jinx,
So
this is the Development Hell podcast, okay? Do you think that there is a world where we do a bonus episode where we do a staged reading of it? Because it would, because think about it. It was a play that was in development and then got shut down, Development Hell style, but it's also based on a horror movie / book. It's perfect subject matter. We gotta talk about this.
I am completely fine with that. I just have to lay my hands on that script again. It's probably not going to happen anytime
Oh my god,
soon.
we could get Allie to be in it too because she's so talented.
Allie would be awesome. She's got to be Julie.
Wouldn't she be so good?
She would be
Allie
amazing.
could be Julie. I don't know. Okay. So we'll talk about this off air. Everybody, this is in the works. I know just summer of the show. It's happening here on Development Hell. That's a pretty iconic origins with I Know What You Did Last Summer.
And my
my
fandom continues in bizarre ways even to this day. So
I mean, listen, me too. I Know What You Did Last Summer. This will age me up and down. Was the very first horror movie I ever saw.
Oh, nice.
1997 Halloween. I believe my mom and I rented it. I finally got her to rent me a horror movie, and it could only ever happen on Halloween, and I had to make my choice wisely. And it was I Know What You Did Last Summer, and I haven't really looked back ever since. Horror has been my jam.
I think you chose wisely there. That is, I Know What You Did Last Summer, I would think is wonderful gateway horror.
Oh, it was literally perfect. Although I remember I had a whole year where I wasn't allowed to rent a horror movie again, and then Halloween 1998, I rented less of a great pick. We did Disturbing Behavior, and I know some people have love in their heart for it, but I do remember at the time it was a bit of a letdown. You know, you get one horror movie a year, and that's what you pick.
That's we got to talk about that more one day. But no, Disturbing Behavior is, from what I've read about it and from what's clear on all of the home video releases of it, is that was going to be a much more ambitious, much more thematically sound movie. And then it sounds like the studio came in and they just, removed large swaths of it, and then they gave it a more upbeat ending, and it
wasn't
kind of
so
a bummer.
Horror though. I feel like maybe it was marketed a little too slasher-y, and it wasn't.
Oh, totally, yeah.
Delivering on that specifically.
It was totally like they had something that was going to be like, okay, let's make something like, not exactly, but let's make something like Invasion of the Body Snatchers or the Stepford Wives, but let's set it in high school. Let's do the teen version of that. And it's like the studio, rather than allowing the director, who was, I believe, an X-Files director at the time, was it David Nutter, I think maybe? Rather than let him doing the smartest possible version of that, they went with this lowest common denominator thing. Like, well, the kids all love Scream. Let's make it feel like Scream. And it's like, one, Scream is great. But two, that's not what this is. And I think in trying to change his vision, they obviously
muddied it
seriously damaged the film. And, and then you get all the trailers that's like, let's just focus on all the action. Let's set it all to flagpole sitta. And, it's just, I don't know. But
I would absolutely revisit it, though, now that I have less expectations. And the cast, iconic.
Yeah, I don't think that actually, even in its truncated form, the cut up form, I still think it's a fun movie. And I will, my inner 17-year-old will always have a crush on Goth Katie Holmes. So
Goth Katie Holmes. I know. Listen, Katie Holmes, love you, babe, but never up to snuff with her peers. I'm sorry. Everyone else of that era, Oscar worthy babes, like Michelle Williams, all of them. But then there's Katie Holmes, and all I can think about is her performance in Don't Be Afraid of the Dark. And I'm sorry, it's just not working.
But to be fair, Don't Be Afraid of the Dark, Katie Holmes is not the worst thing about that movie.
I know. I was so excited for Don't Be Afraid of the Dark to come out, and it just it's not what I needed it to be, and that's okay, because That's fine. Before we get deeper into discussing I Know What You Did Last Summer, the original film series, I want to have like a little bit of a chit chat about Mike Flanagan because we're going to get into him and his co-writer's vision of I Know What You Did Last Summer. But before then, I'm just wondering, like, what's your relationship with Flanagan? Like, are you a stan? Do you have specific properties that you like more than others? Where are you?
I really love Mike Flanagan's work, and I especially love the work that he and writer Jeff Howard do together.
Hmm. Which is before Netflix, right?
Yeah,
Oh no, they did Gerald's
well,
Game.
yeah. I mean, it's weird because so I think Flanagan wrote and directed Absentia himself, and that's a
Hmm.
great first feature. And then Oculus, I think, is when they started writing together, and then Flanagan was directing. I love Oculus. They did
Hell
this movie
yeah.
called Somnia,
Hmm.
which was, there was a great trailer
Great.
that played in a lot of theaters. I remember seeing like the I forget what it played in front of, maybe The Visit or something like that, but it was
Cool.
going to be a big theatrical film, and then it became Before I Wake, and then it basically just went away. And I
Yeah.
remember I wound up importing a Canadian Blu-ray because it wasn't available here in the States, and it wouldn't be for about a year after.
Represent.
It went to Netflix, and it's funny. Zena Dixon, my friend down here,
Hmm.
her husband and I worked together, and I
Cool.
remember bringing him. I was like, and I had not even met her at this point, but it was like, yeah, my wife has kind of like a following online. She's like huge into horror. I think you guys would be like best friends if you ever met. And I was like, oh, that's neat. And I remember watching Before I Wake, which I absolutely adored. And that movie destroys me. The ending it turns me into a sobbing mess. And I
It's
just think
rough.
it's brilliant and beautiful and
Hmm.
incredible work. And I remember taking that Blu-ray into work, and I was like, Rico, you have to make your wife watch this. Like,
Oh,
you have to.
cool.
And so
Oh,
he came
that's
back like 2
cool.
days later, and he was like, "Yeah, good call." So,
Oh, that's
uh,
fun. Yeah, we love her. She was on this podcast. We did the fourth Candyman movie together.
yes, yeah, yeah, yeah. Love Xena to bits,
I know.
and then from there, I remember hating the original Ouija, but I
Okay.
just because it was Flanagan, I was like, okay, so this is Flanagan and Howard. Kind of, are they selling out? Are they not? I guess we'll see. And I went to the movie theater and I watched Ouija Origin of Evil, and I was like, so
Bam.
that was great. That was
A perfect horror movie.
Loved it. It was such a marvelous like spook show of a horror film. It was creepy,
Perfect.
scary, fun, wonderfully cast. It
Yep.
had that great. It did that retro feel in such a way that felt
Awkwardly.
genuine. When a lot of movies feel like they're just kind of aping.
Oh, no one does it well,
Let's just
but
let's throw
it did
some
it well.
film grain, and let's do the old
Hmm.
logo at the top. And instead, it was just like, well, we're going to do that, but we're also going to make it feel like it was actually of that era. And by God, they did. Gerald's Game, with the exception of that not great last final shot,
Yeah,
I think is a marvelous movie.
it's great.
And it
It's
was
so good.
I think it was around that time that it was said that they were going to be remaking I Know What You Did Last Summer. And I just remember
Oh,
thinking
okay.
like, okay, that's an interesting choice. Are they going to
Yeah,
update Julie and the gang? Are we going to get another telling of it? Like, what is the deal here?
it was
And
interesting. Yeah.
it just, what I guess it was just one of those things where I was kind of waiting and waiting and waiting because I'm a huge fan of the series. And they never said anything more about it.
Yeah, it just never happened. I remember there was some article in Arrow in the Head around 2017 where they were like, "Yeah, it's not happening," and I was so heartbroken because I almost think I have more love in my heart for this than I do for Scream, just for nostalgia reasons.
I
So I
get it.
was really gunning for it.
I get it entirely. But his work since then too. I mean, Haunting of Hill House is just marvelous.
it
His
it's
director's cut of Doctor Sleep, I think, is a masterpiece. And Midnight
Mhm.
Mass might even be. I go back and forth. I'll just say this: Midnight Mass is a masterpiece too. Midnight Mass is like his best television work. I think Doctor Sleep is
All
his
right,
best
all right.
film
You know
work.
what? I've put up with enough today. You haven't even mentioned Bly Manor. You haven't even brought it up, which is, I think, the one that I've imprinted on the most. In
Really? Okay.
terms,
See, I gotta tell you
yeah.
something. I've only seen the opening episode, and I liked it. I really did like it,
Okay, well, how dare you?
but
It,
I didn't finish it, so I can't really. I'm not saying it's
please,
good. I'm not saying it's
please
bad.
watch
I'm
it.
just saying I haven't seen it.
I I think it gets a bit lost in the shuffle because of Hill House, but it's so beautiful and it's so tragic and it's just such perfectly made TV. I couldn't recommend it more. As a Hammer fan, I think you'll find a lot to love in it. It
Ooh,
is
sold.
it's so good. And there's one episode in particular near the end of the season where they do kind of like a black and white origin story of the antagonist, and it's so scary and so good. And it's the one episode that stars is it Kate Siegel?
Kate Siegel, who is marvelous, and
Yeah.
shame on us both for not mentioning Hush, which
Oh
is
my god, how
marvelous
dare
film.
us. Ugh, hang up right now. Yeah. It was, it was small. It was obviously an earlier work for him, and it felt sort of like a demo of what he could achieve, and god is it good.
But what are we? Okay, so yeah, we're both fans. Are we Flanagan fans, or what are we Fanagans? Are we Fanaflans? Like, how does that work?
Are we Stanigans?
I don't
No.
know how to
No.
feel about that.
Okay. We're going to figure it out by the end of the episode because
Flanistans? No,
Flanistans,
sounds like a
Flanagan,
country. I don't know.
Flanaman. I think that we're gonna have to just trust ourselves that it'll come up eventually. Yeah, we're both fans. For me, it's Bly Manor. If you had to pick one property, TV show, movie, anything, what's your number one Flanagan?
Mm,
It's Bly for me.
probably Doctor Sleep,
How
the director's cut. So
have we talked about Doctor Sleep before? I feel like we have.
I
Do you
don't.
know where I stand on it?
I don't. Tell me.
I hated it. I hated it.
Okay,
I'm
did you watch
so
theatrical or
no.
did you go directors?
Yes, so we have talked about this. No, it was only theatrical for me.
Okay, Josh, here's the thing. I was so pumped to watch that movie. I rewatched. I went to my local theater when they ran The Shining for like this one night special in 4K. It was amazing. I'm
Nice.
a huge fan of The Shining, both
Me
movie
too.
and book.
Me too.
That trailer for Doctor Sleep, the trailer was one of the
Mm,
best movies I saw that year,
it's a good
and
trailer.
I went opening night to watch Doctor Sleep, fully expecting to love it, and when I walked out, I was like, "Yeah, it's fun. It's okay.
It
okay.
was so
It's all right."
boring and
It
bad.
was so.
I'm mad. No, I'm okay. Sorry.
Here's what's crazy is that you're 100% right. The 2.5 hour long version of that
Oh
movie
my. Ugh.
drags and is kind of dull. Now here's the crazy thing is that the 30 minutes longer, the 3 hour long director's cut
No.
moves like
Stop.
a bat out of hell.
Okay.
The pacing is improved, the performances, like there's so many bits, like just everything meshes perfectly. It's like a car, like an engine that has a couple of cylinders that aren't firing properly when you watch the theatrical cut, and then you get to the director's cut and you've got more in there, sure, but now everything works properly.
Historically, your takes I have agreed with, so this is something that I may have to endure. But I have to say, I'm not excited because I remember me and my best friend Emily saw it in theaters, and it was just like super snooze fest
You
galore.
should seriously, you both should sit down, watch the director's cut, and I would put good money on you both
Hmm.
not merely liking it, but loving it.
I listen. I trust you. So one of these days, it's going to happen. They did great work with the lady in the bathtub. I thought every time she was on screen, it was really scary. They
Oh
really
yeah,
achieved greatness with that. And I'm such a dick for not remember her name, but the actress that they cast as Wendy from Starry Eyes. Holy
oh,
crap!
Alex Esso.
Oh my god, that was genius. That was so good.
She was
Um,
scary good as Wendy
What
in
the
that.
fuck? And I'm not the kind of person where you have to look identical to the person you're playing to work, but she did, and it really worked.
Yeah, I think I could buy immediately as Wendy. I gotta say, Henry Thomas as Jack
Pretty cool.
took yeah the
Oh,
first,
did it
okay,
take you out of it? I thought it was cool.
because I think we only see him initially like at the bar, and there's an aspect to him where he looked like a dime store version of Jack Nicholson in that moment to me. And so it took
Okay.
me. The scene did not work for me because that was the first time I saw it. Now later in the movie, when he is stalking down the hallway, like when they do that flashback and he's carrying the axe and
Yes.
it's
Yes.
daddy, you know, um,
Ugh.
that I was like, oh, okay, he nailed it. So weirdly, and plus, I think it was the pitch of the performance in that moment where I'm like, this is not Jack, this is not Jack, this is not Jack. And then I think it took me until that second viewing when I realized, like, okay, much like Lloyd, the bartender before him, like, he's not Jack anymore. He is an agent of the
Of
hotel.
the hotel.
So he's not wide
So
eyed,
scary.
crazy, loud, silly Jack. He is much more muted and sinister.
Mm.
And I'm like, as a result, it worked like gangbusters for me. And I was like, oh no, he's actually great in this role.
He's good in other Flanagan stuff too. He was in Hill House, right? But
Oh
he's
yeah.
great in Bly Manor. He's just so good and aged like a fine wine. If you're okay with it, I'm gonna hop skip back to I Know What You Did Last Summer, because before we get into Flanagan's version of events, I kind of feel like I want to unpack the series as a whole just a little bit more. We were talking about your affinity for the book. Lois Duncan and you. Have you read anything else by her? Are you a stan?
Yes, no, I do. I have not read a lot by her, but I've read enough to know that I am a fan. What's crazy is that I am currently recording in the same town that she sadly passed away in about 6 years ago. I moved down here in late 2017,
Hmm.
only to find out not long after I did that Lois Duncan basically grew up in the town next to this one
Oh,
in
you could have
Florida.
interviewed her for sure.
It would have been like a dream come true. She moved, I want to say, out west for a time, and then eventually moved back to Florida to the Sarasota area. And then she passed away in 2016 here. And
Hmm.
yeah, I would love to have met her, to shake her hand, to tell her what her book and her work means to me. She is, she wrote a lot of young adult stuff, but she also wrote a true crime book that was an investigation into her own daughter's murder.
And I've read. Have you read it?
I have not. I have not. I'm sorry to say.
It's interesting. The whole scenario of her daughter's death, very bizarre, very fascinating. The book, I think it's called "Who Killed My Daughter" or "I Know Who
Yes.
Killed
Yeah.
My Daughter." Yeah, it's surprisingly enough, BuzzFeed did a really in depth investigation of the whole scenario. Really interesting read if you don't have time for the whole book.
Yeah. I may have to
Um,
check that out.
yeah,
And I think there was a
and
follow up too. I think she did write like an updating years and years later, but I don't think there was anything ever definitive that was found out about the case.
yeah, there's some problematic elements to the book too, just because the era was different, and there was some. I think she believed it was like a Filipino gang that was involved, possibly with the death of her daughter, and so there was some like racial issues with the book that I will not hold up reading it now, but it's all extremely fascinating and would make like a really interesting true crime podcast or even maybe like a limited Netflix series because it was never solved and it's really really strange.
Yeah, that would be interesting. And I wish more of her work would get adapted. I think, there's a lot of great stuff.
Well,
She
yeah,
has a
adapted
line of,
properly.
yeah, well, yeah. I mean, that's the
Killing
thing
Mr.
is,
Griffin. Sorry.
I remember watching that back in the day because
Me
it was
too.
her. And
Not the moment. Although I think that's another Michelle Williams joint.
oh my goodness, was that? I can only remember
I
Jonathan
think.
Brandis doing the big villain monologue, and
Oh yeah. Was that Killing Mr. Griffin or there was another one too?
oh fuck, did
I've
I
been
conflate
waiting
them?
for you or something.
That might be it.
I think that where he has got like these weird talons in it. Does that sound right? They're all the same. It's fine.
um, damn it, now I can't remember. No, okay, Killing Mr. Griffin had like Amy Jo Johnson in it and Mario Lopez. So
Is Amy Jo Johnson? Was she from Scrubs?
no, Amy Jo Johnson was. I mean, she might have been. She started out in. She was the Pink Ranger in Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, and she
Oh,
was
of
in. She
course.
was in Felicity.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, there's a couple of those late '90s sort of Lois Duncan adaptations that get kind of combined in my brain.
No, I get it.
Although I remember loving the book for Killing Mr. Griffin as a child.
Yeah, I mean that could definitely have another take. And what's interesting, like you could take her stories and do like direct adaptations, and they would be great. Like gateway horror slash thriller stories, for people. Or you could do the Neil Moritz. You could do the I Know What You Did Last Summer take and be like, okay, we're gonna do Killing Mr. Griffin, but we're gonna give it a hard edge, and it's
I think you'd have to. Otherwise, you're going to get another. What was that Kevin Williamson directorial debut? Teaching
uh,
Mrs. Tingle.
Teaching
Sorry.
Mrs. Tingle, which was originally Killing Mrs. Tingle, which had to have been a nod to Killing Mr. Griffin, but they had to
Right?
change it
Definitely.
after. What did they change that after? It wasn't.
Columbine or something?
Yeah, I think it was after Columbine.
So I rewatched all three I Know What You Did Last Summer films in preparation for this. Didn't have to do it, but chose to do it, and I stand by my decision. I still know what you did last summer. It's not as good as the original. Where do you stand on it?
So, for the longest time, I actually despised the sequel.
Mm.
I
Mm-hmm.
hated the sequel. I saw it opening night, and I just hated every damn thing about it, Josh. And I
Mm.
kind of held to that hate. I let it nourish me for years, and
Yum, yum, yum.
eventually I revisited it, and I think I actually did it for one of my early columns, long since defunct, for Bloody Disgusting, was called Second Chances. And it was all about taking these movies that I hated and hadn't watched in years and basically giving them another shot. And I
Mm-hmm.
watched I Still Know What You Did Last. I watched I Still Know What You Did Last Summer again, for the purposes of that. And I actually found some things that I enjoyed about it. I didn't hate it nearly as much as I had once before. And so, I was like, okay, is it good still? No, no, not at all.
Mm-mm.
But it's passable entertainment. I can give it that. I sort of made my peace with it. And then during the
Hmm.
pandemic, I did an episode of my podcast, Scream Addicts, and it actually concerned oh the original I Know What You Did Last Summer. So
Uh,
yeah, and so it was great. We had a marvelous conversation about it, and in the course of actually talking about it and having a conversation about the podcast, as we, or rather the movie that we are now,
mhm.
um I was like, maybe I want to go ahead and rewatch the first movie again, but maybe I want to go ahead and give the sequel another shot, because my guest, it was Tamika Jones. She actually liked the sequel enough and she talked it up enough. I was like, damn it, is there something else that I'm missing there? And so I watched it again, and damn it, if I didn't love it. Is it bad, Josh? Yes.
Oh, it's
Does it have all of
terrible.
its flaws? All of its flaws that I pointed out and picked at when I disliked it, they're still there.
Hmm.
But
But
the
now you
movie,
celebrate. Yeah.
like it's beautifully made. Danny Cannon is the same guy who directed Judge Dredd. He shot the living hell
Oh,
out of the movie. It has an amazing look. It has an amazing soundtrack. It has a murderer's row of like great recognizable faces to horror fans
great
in it.
cast.
Marvelous
Yes.
cast, top to bottom.
Yes.
Honestly, Jennifer Love Hewitt. Teenage Jinx, had a massive crush on her.
I mean, there's
Uh,
no one hotter, right? Like, it's just the
what?
hottest
Okay,
of all.
she was. I honestly watching. I Still Know We Did Last Summer. I don't know if she was ever more beautiful than she was in that movie. Uh,
Oh, I was watching that with my best friend. We were talking about the hotness of her in that movie. There's a scene where she's. I'm sorry to do this. There's a scene where she's undressing to go into the sun bed, and it's like bonkers. It's like, whoa, what a babe.
she is absolutely stunning in that film.
And
Um,
there's no Sarah Michelle Gellar hanging around to distract me, right? Like, because I'm always gonna
I
have to be SMG first, but she's not around in the second one. So what are you
think
gonna
that's
do?
fair.
Mhm.
Brandy's beautiful too. So
Oh, Brandy. If it hadn't been for the time she killed someone with her car, you know, we would still be talking. Um,
wait,
I'm
what?
gonna. I think we're gonna take that out. But yeah, I do think that she manslaughtered someone.
Oh my god, what is the deal with like late 90s slasher movie actresses?
They're all killing people, man. Yeah.
Son of a bitch. There's
Yeah, she definitely manslaughtered someone real good.
like
Um,
Noxzema, urban legend girl, and then
oh yeah, she murdered someone too. Wow, these murder. Oh no, because Brandy wasn't a murderer in the movie, just real life. Um, yeah, it's true. There was an era where people were just getting away with murder left, right, and center. The second movie, it's fun. It's never boring, but me and my friends to this day are still making fun of Ben's son. It is the stupidest twist, I think, in the history of any movie. And the way that they spell it out, being like, don't you get it, Julie? Ben's son? It's so stupid.
in my mind, and Paul Farrell and I, fellow podcast hosts, he and I have gone back and forth on this, and there in my mind, that scene runs for 18 minutes. And it's just
long.
Do you get it? Do you get it? Ben's son, Benson, because I'm Ben's son. That's why I made the name.
The son of Ben.
For you to say Benson, but it's actually Ben's son. I'm Ben's son. It's like, Will Benson.
Bitch, I get it. Oh, hi, Dad. And then he's like behind her.
It's like, yeah, you cut to like 15 minutes in, and Julie is just nodding like, I get it. Could we get on with this? Am I running one? You cut back to Will, and he's got like a dry erase board with like, a diagram.
It's like Charlie. It's like Charlie from you know what I'm talking about. From It's Always Sunny.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It's the fucking I stand because I would not erase this from history. I would not do that to us. But it's so stupid.
Though, for the longest time, I was convinced that they sprung that on people at the very end. So it was not even, you didn't even get the pleasure of being able to figure it out along with the characters, being like, oh, of course, I should have gotten that right. And I was like, no, they just say it out of the blue. You don't even hear his name. But on a rewatch, I did notice it during, and they kind of cheat, they kind of cover it up. But if you're watching and if you're paying attention, in the big bar scene when Brandy and Mekhi Phifer are trying to hook Julie up with Will, there is that somebody drops his full name. They're like, Will Benson, and yeah.
Oh, okay, I'm glad you brought it up because that's the best scene in the movie is the karaoke scene. It is, and maybe that's a different one, but the karaoke scene, also the funniest moment in horror history, where it says "I know you did last summer" on the karaoke screen. How did he do that?
How did he do that?
He and time it, and especially with 1998 karaoke technology, I just don't believe it, hun.
Yeah,
I don't buy it.
That would be a trick even today to get away with that. The way but no, it's just awful.
My god, it's a stupid movie, but I love it. And I also forgot until this rewatch about the sun tanning scene. Always scary because not only do you have the fear of being burned alive, but like the claustrophobia of it too. And there's something really scary about zip ties. I don't know why, but zip ties freak me out. So.
Yeah, no, it is a creepy scene. And which is weird, it's so confusing because, it's Jennifer Love Hewitt in a bikini, but also, 2 seconds later she's in peril. And I'm just like, what? So many emotions.
So many confusing emotion boners. Yeah, I agree. Very strange scene. I stand it though. No, obviously not to the same quality of Final Destination 3 where they really go for it, but pretty good.
I will say, I love the look of the fisherman in the movie, especially when he, when you watch him in the first movie, it's just kind of like, oh, there's a rough-hewn fisherman guy. He looks like he's got a tan. He's got like a, kind of a 5 o'clock shadow going on. He's kind of a rough-looking dude. And that's kind of it. Muse Watson, the way they have him made up at the end of
Scary.
I Still Know, like his hair is slicked back, but isn't like one of his eyes kind of milked over?
He looks weird. He looks kind of Frankenstein. It's scary.
Yes, there's something very sort of hammer horror in the presentation of him, and he's almost like it's almost like he's playing his own ghost. There's something almost spectral about him at the end of it. I
love that. I wish they had played with that a little bit more, unlike the way they did it in I'll Always Know You Did Last Summer.
Oh, shall we? Are we jumping to the third one?
Why don't we do it? I think it's time because I don't think that our audience gets enough I'll Always Know What You Did Last Summer content in their lives. Now, I could be wrong, but I'm making that judgment. So I did rewatch I'll Always Know What You Did Last Summer a couple of days ago because I love everyone that's listening and I would do anything for you, including that. When was the last time you watched I'll Always Know What You Did Last Summer, Jinx?
It was probably during that same time. I had only ever
Okay.
seen it once when it came out, and I got to tell you, like, those felt like pretty great times in the mid aughts where you could get those sequels to franchises that you loved, and it's like, oh, here's this brand new thing, awesome. And I felt like that about I Know What You Did Last Summer, even though I was like, okay, Julie's not in it, so what's the
No.
point? But okay, the fisherman is in it somehow, some way. You know what? I'm gonna go with it, and I'm gonna hope for the best, and let's do this. And yeah, and that's my bad. So
Yeah, it was error. It was an error.
yeah,
But
I don't. Here's the thing: it does some interesting stuff, like.
yeah,
I like I'm not saying they're decisions that I agree with, but when we look back on slasher film history, it's not without precedent that you could take a formerly mortal villain and then turn him supernatural, at a certain point, like cough Friday the 13th cough. Okay, fine. The fact that they got a Michael Myers actor to play the fisherman in it, okay.
they
Uh,
did.
yeah, it was I want to
Who?
think it was Don Shanks who
Oh, wow, the Shank Man.
he
Cool.
was Michael on Halloween 5, big dude. Um
Another highlight of the series.
yeah. Well, and then we have Sylvain White who would go. What's weird is that he
Who?
literally went directly from I'll Always Know What He Did Last Summer to the very next year he directed Stomp the Yard, which was a
Cool.
movie that did pretty damned well.
Yeah, it did. It was a huge movie. I didn't realize that he did that movie. Good for
Mhm.
him.
And then 3 years later, he did The Losers for a pretty big cast.
I don't know
Uh,
that one.
and then after that, like he did a film called Faces in the Crowd, and then in 2013 he did a film called The Mark of the Angels, and then I think he's mostly been in television ever since.
The first one, not the first one. Always Went to Last Summer definitely has a very TV energy to it.
Yeah,
I was convinced it was Canadian because the lead actress is Canadian, and this is not impressive. But I did go to high school with her sister, so that's always kind of been
really.
on my mind. Yeah, the Nevins sisters, and she, I think her name's Brooke Nevin, did a fine in it. She is not. I do not complain about her performance. And Tori DeVito kind of does what she needs to do. She plays like the rocker chick in it, and she's in literally everything. She had lead roles in Pretty Little Liars and Vampire Diaries, I think, like at the same time.
Oh wow, good for her.
Good for her. Yeah. So although the girl lead and the boy lead, their names are Amber and Colby, and that's just too egregiously 2006 for my tastes.
We had Amber, Colby, Zoe, and Lance.
Oh, Lance, come on, buds. I know, and there's like spiky blonde hair still. It's like it's rough.
Yeah, I believe his name was Lance Benson. Benson. Do you get it?
Are you joking? You're joking.
I might be joking. I might not.
There's no. I mean, you know what? I'll never know.
You're just
I'll
going
never
to.
know. I'm just gonna have to accept this for what this is. I kind of like the idea of it being taken place in like a ski town in the summer. There is something kind of I Know What You Did Last Summer to that vibe, but they, they don't fulfill on that vibe very well. But that's okay. That's fine. I
Yeah.
kind of like you. I think I'm okay with it just existing. There's something about the fact that there's a shitty third I Know What You Did Last Summer just in the ether that I kind of am grateful for. And yeah, the final act, outrageous and kind of worth the price of admission to some degree.
The big reveal of Ben Willis as a zombie.
As like a
or
cult of sorts. Yeah. And
it's
then
like,
how
is
she
he a
kills him.
ghost? Is he a zombie? What is he exactly? What the fuck is going on there?
He's a goby. And that one shot of his face, kind of scary for 2006.
Yeah, no, I mean it's impressive, but it's just like, in that moment, that's when that's maybe part of the reason that I've got my reasons, but That's one of the reasons that I felt a little cheated at the end. Was not only did this series go supernatural when it previously hadn't, but
Mhm.
it felt the entire time like you were watching a whodunit. So it's
Mhm.
going to be one of the characters that we know, and it's going to feel
Oh,
like a
yeah.
big surprise. And then you get to that moment, and we still get a surprise, but it's also kind of a cheat.
It's a total cheat because, yeah, the whole thing is a whodunit, and then it's just like, oh, I guess no, it's not. It's a weird ghost movie. I do like that she pushes him into like a tractor. That was kind of fun. And he
Oh my
like
god!
bleeds. Everyone was like, "Why is he bleeding black goo?" She's like, "I don't know."
And
Fair enough.
what is it? His ghost is connected to the hook that he previously carried.
Right, because the hook is what like they shooting him does nothing, but like pricking him with a hook hurts him.
And
So
why did somebody get the actual hook? Like, come on, why?
I mean, why not? I would. I'd be
But
like, "Where's the
also
hook?"
why?
Yeah, but it's true. And the opening scene is like the opening death is like really stupid. Someone like skateboards off of off of a building. It's like, okay, sure. But I'm grateful that it exists. For a long time I was like a little bit obsessed with it just because like just the concept of like a kind of lost direct to video I know we did last summer is just so fascinating to me. I just wish that it had been a little bit more watchable. Someone online kind of compared it to the existence of urban legend Bloody Mary, and I do think they're kind of married. I think they're kind of related in
There
a.
is a 100%. There is a company based out of, I think it's the UK. It's either the UK or Australia, but it's called 88 Films. And they released this beautiful box set for all three I Know What You Did Last Summer films. And they're all Blu-rays, which weirdly enough, the third film had never gotten a Blu-ray before, I don't think. It was straight to DVD and nothing else.
Mhm.
But yes, within this box, you had I Know What You Did Last Summer, I Still Know, and then I'll Always Know. So you had the two theatrical films, and then you had the third film, which was Supernatural, had no connection to the two previous movies, and had gone straight to DVD. And then a couple
Cool.
of months later, yes, they put out the Urban Legend box set, and it's the same damn thing. You have a third installment that is now Supernatural when the franchise hadn't been, otherwise has no connection to it whatsoever. Went straight to DVD. It's just, yeah, it's what is going on with those franchises? And
It's
better
so
better
weird.
question, where is the Amazon Prime Urban Legends TV show?
Oh my god. First, I was thinking about this very recently. Where is the Urban Legend franchise, hun? Where did you go? And yeah, a series would be great. What like it's just makes sense. It's just perfect. But yeah, where is this franchise? We love this franchise. I'm sorry, I love the second movie. I really am here for after all these years. I never not don't have fun with Final Cut.
I love the second movie. I think the second movie is
Yes.
genuinely just a damn
Yes.
good film.
It's so Canadian. They film it at this like low rent Canadian university called Trent University, and it's just everything about it I love. And then of course the first one filmed at University of Toronto where I went to school. So yeah, that's fun
Nice.
for me.
Yeah, it's a good film, and it really proved, I think, that John Ottman had a great eye. He knew how to pace a movie. He knew how to get good performances out of his cast. He could definitely craft a solid set piece. That is a guy who deserved to have a better career than he wound up having
Yeah.
as a
Yes.
director. Like, obviously, he's a great,
And it was successful too,
composer.
I'm assuming. It got a couple sequels? Wait, are you talking about
Yeah.
wait. He directed Final Cut?
Yes, he directed the second one. Jamie Blanks
Oh, I
directed the
see. Yeah, no,
first.
that didn't
So
do that good. Although I love it. I love when they're like there's so many set pieces in that are just so funny and silly. Like at the end where they're on the ride and it's just like so good. I love
the
that movie.
I love that they're all nerdy film students, so
Me
like you can
too.
sort of connect to those. The one of my favorite bits, Anthony Anderson, I think, who at that period was
Oh,
pretty
okay.
annoying. I thought he was actually a lot of fun in that movie, but
I
the
forgot that he was in it. That's so funny. I forgot and now I can see him on the poster too as like a little baby.
and Ava
I'm gonna
Mendes,
get
early Ava Mendes. So
yeah, and the girl from Once Upon a Time / How I Met Your Mother.
oh my
The
goodness,
lead.
yeah.
I have to say I prefer it to Scream 2 in terms of sequels that take place at film school.
Oh, Josh,
Okay, I
no,
have to cut that. I
Josh.
I honestly will have to cut that out because people will unsubscribe in as in masses.
I'm gonna have to leave.
Although I have to say, Scream 2 least favorite of the Scream series.
Oh, watch it again. Watch it again.
Maybe you're right.
The cop
And you know
car
why? Okay,
sequence,
I'm
the
just
stage
so mad
sequence with
about the underuse of
Cassandra.
Sarah Michelle. The Sarah Michelle Gellar underusage is disgusting to me. That is not a cameo. That is just a waste. That is
Okay,
just environmental waste.
But the flip side of that is, look at it this way. Imagine if you're Wes Craven, and I'm not saying this happened. I'm just saying imagine this. Imagine you're
Okay.
Wes Craven, and they said, hey, Buffy the Vampire Slayer is really hot. I know what you did last summer. Had this great actress in it. We really want her to have a cameo in this movie. And what if Wes Craven was like, you know what? We're going to do more than that. We're going to give her more than a cameo. Like, it was only ever meant to be a throwaway character. And instead, they built an amazing like horror set piece with her, and she acted her socks off.
Well, of
and
course,
it was incredible.
Of course,
like,
I don't know. I don't know. I'm still mad about it. It's a great sequence. It just feels like I wish it had just been in the classroom. I wish that it had literally just been a cameo, because I think that would have not rubbed me as terribly. And as a theater school alumnus, the Greek theater stuff is so cringy.
Oh God, I love it. I love it so much. Is it remotely realistic? No, not at all. But that is like.
And was he there? Is he in there? Like, is she imagining him, or is he there? I really don't know.
I think we're meant to. Well, it's meant to be a question, right? Like we're not sure. But honestly, I don't think as otherwise grounded as those films are, as much as they can be, and as realistic as they're trying to be, again, within their world, it's not like anybody is imagining their dead father talking to them exactly as they would have been before they were born. But as grounded as the second movie tries to be, I can't imagine that Mickey or Billy's mom are actually flitting about within all those actors. That just doesn't make any sense.
Fuck?
I think it just shows that Sydney is in like a really vulnerable point. She's literally seeing him everywhere, and she's starting to have like a breakdown. But what's great is, my God, like that scene with her and David Warner, and that sort of inspiring speech that he gives her, which is undercut with a little bit of humor at the end. Like
David Warner, who's that?
He was the drama teacher. When she says, she says something like, "Yeah, I'm a fighter," and he's like, "I don't believe you." And she's like, "I'm a fighter," and he's like, "I just don't, And then like her jaw like clenches and her eyes go hard, and she says, "I'm a fighter." Like she believes it, It just so many great little moments like that I adore. And plus, I think Craven shot the living hell out of it. There is no, well, I won't say there's no, like he bested it himself, I think, with the Casey sequence in the first film, but
yeah,
one of the greatest purely intense. Oh, sorry.
Can I guess what you're gonna say?
Yes.
In terms of, okay, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I think there's two possible outcomes for what you're about to say. Either the opening or the cop car.
Cop car.
Yeah!
The opening is great. Scene. The opening is awesome, but the cop car is, I mean, that's just a director at the top of his game directing the living hell out of a sequence.
It's one of the best sequences in, horror, actually. You're right. Really amazing. Really scary. One of the scariest moments in the series, for sure. I've got to revisit it. I don't know. I've always just had a contentious relationship with Scream 2. And why is that so wrong? Okay, before we move on towards...
talking about being contentious about Scream films, I just want to take 2 seconds. If anybody out there loves Scream 5, I'm sorry for being so bitchy about it. But it's just...
it's a safe space. True.
And I do want to say, when it comes to Radio Silence, I really love their shorts for the VHS movies. I really
so good. And Southbound.
I think Southbound. I think that Devil's Due is a genuinely underrated movie that's far more clever and inventive than it's given credit for. And I mean, come on, Ready or Not is just superb. So
it's good.
So
my theater school teachers is in that. Can I impress you with that?
Really?
The older lady, like the grandma or whatever. She's like.
With the scowl,
Yeah. She taught me theater.
That's so.
Nikki
She was in a
She's in Cube.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, I
Yeah.
looked that up and I was like, oh my god, she's amazing in that.
She was also in one of my original plays called Sycorax and the Angel, very 2011. So I'm famous.
Love it.
Thank you. Before we move on into the Mike Flanagan, I know what you did last summer reboot, the reason that we're all here. I'm wondering, have you seen the Amazon series? Do you know what we did last summer? Amazon series.
I have, yeah, and it's okay. The most diplomatic way that I can say this is that it was not for me, but I will say
Same.
this: I watched every damned episode. I was
Okay.
there waiting for every episode to drop every week on Amazon Prime. I could not wait to see the new ones. So, they did that right. I do think the lead performance is
Terrible.
Oh, I liked her quite a bit.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I thought I was with you on that one. Oh no, I hate her. You know what? I can't speak. I saw like 3 episodes. It really wasn't for me. Can I ask a spoiler question that I think I have the answer to?
Sure.
No fisherman at all?
No, not remotely.
What the fuck? Yeah, I get it, but like also like no. No wonder you deserve a cancel because you obviously don't know why we love this series. And it's not because of Hawaii looking so beautiful and the honey, which is stupid. But
the honey I did not get, especially like that was part of the marketing. I remember seeing the poster for the first time, and I was like, what
they look like they're covered in jizz. It's really weird. And then, do you know Creepy Duck Design?
Yes, yeah.
He had done all of these they had hired him. Amazon had hired him to do all these amazing
I remember
sheets.
those. They were great.
They're so good. And then they fucking drop it for the honeycomb poster. Oh, God.
I remember somebody actually put together this meme. It was that poster, and then it was like a shot of Jerry Seinfeld's character from was it a bee movie?
Movie?
And it was a picture of the bee, but it looked like he was in the throes of ecstasy because his mouth was open and his eyes were rolled back. And so literally one went to the other, and it's like, oh, okay, that's rough.
That's funny. That's funny. I like that. That's going on the feeds.
But no, Madison Eisman, her lead performance, I thought she was quite good. I really liked parts of it, and they got Craig William McNeil to direct the pilot. I think he did The Boy, not the creepy doll movie, but the other one about the burgeoning serial killer.
The Boy. Actually, I like the creepy doll one. Fair enough. Interesting.
I like them both. He did the first season of Channel Zero Candle Cove, which was superb.
Hell yes. Very good.
So he was, there are aspects of the TV show.
Zero. That's what they did. Yeah, there are, and I know that like the original film series is not doing the book real justice. And
no.
And I can see why they had the right to go in any direction they wanted, but I think that they fucked up not going horror and not going fisherman. I think that would have done a lot better for them.
So you've only seen the first 3 episodes, so you don't even know who the killer is, right?
Can you tell me?
I could, but I don't think it would mean anything to you until you watch the show.
Are they like not in the first few episodes or something?
No, they are. I mean, it's one of the friends, but it just...
Is it the friend that gets her hair cut?
Yes, I think so. It's the Brianna Shu, I believe, is the...
Okay. Yeah, her.
Yeah.
That makes no sense. Yeah, that means nothing. I have no idea how that could be the case. But she wants to be more internet famous or something, and in the first episode, they like get her and her family to do like TikTok dances together, and that's when I fully checked out.
Yeah, and she was okay.
Was she in the Scream show? Or, I'm sorry if
I honestly don't know. I know that she
that was good.
I know that she had to utter the word mukbanging, and when she did, I was just kind of like, and plus, not for that. Again, I don't want to piss on this show that much. Like I said, it's not for me. I know that there were some people who really dug it, and I think that's awesome. I think every generation should have their own. I know we did last summer, and exactly. But when honestly, if I never hear the word sus again in my life,
we're too old.
We're
too old for that bullshit. So. And whoever wrote that was also too old for that bullshit too. And that whole cast. Okay,
I
well,
will say to that end, I am hoping to interview the creator and showrunner soon. She was kind enough to email me back. I want to interview her about where the show would have gone in seasons 2 and 3 because there are some really
I'd like to know.
interesting setups at the end of the first season that sadly now will never pay off. So, and she's a very, very nice, very sweet person. So, and she was great to get back to me. So, like I said, I'm not keen on just bashing the show at length. I'll just say that, like, it's
Uh-huh.
not my generation's I Know What You Did Last Summer, but that's okay because you know what? The
It's no
'97
one's.
slasher movie was not the
Was
same
not.
experience for
Yeah.
the people who grew up in the '70s and '80s reading the young and adult novel. So that's okay.
No. Yes, to each generation, there is a different slayer, and that's fine. Um, all right, we're here. We're excited. We finally made it to the main event, which is the Mike Flanagan reboot, the 2016 Jeff Howard, Mike Flanagan reboot of it all. And I know that you have written an in-depth Phantom Limbs article about it. Did you mention Phantom Limbs at the start of the episode today and what that means, like what it is?
I don't think I did, and you threw me there for a second when you said main event. I thought we were down at the BCom, but
Yeah, that was the intro. But yeah, I feel like a lot of I think like most of the information on the internet about the Flanagan Jeff Howard project comes from your column on it. So I think for people that may not know, can you just remind us what Phantom Limbs is?
yes. So Phantom Limbs is a column that I write for Bloody Disgusting, the horror website. It basically concerns the histories of unmade, unproduced horror sequels and remakes, and the stories that they would have told. I was lucky enough to run across the screenplay out there in Screenplay Land for I Know What You Did Last Summer. And I was like, oh my goodness, I would love to write about this. So I reached out to Jeff Howard on Twitter, and he was kind enough to agree to chat about it. And so, with the understanding that if I did write about it, he really, and understandably so,
Hmm.
out of respect for him and for Mike Flanagan and for Neill Moritz, the producer, I agreed to synopsize as much as I think they would have been comfortable with
Hmm.
without delving into spoilers or how the story would have ended. And then Jeff Howard basically provided the entire history of how it came to be, how he and Flanagan came to be a part of the project, the fact that they worked on it, the story it would have told, why it ultimately didn't happen. And yeah, I was very happy to put that out into the world because as a fan, I really wanted to know what happened with that project and why it didn't go. And I was very happy that I got to be the guy to sort of shepherd that story out there. So.
I mean, it's truly like it's the only journalism that I need on the internet is this. And honestly, Phantom Limbs in general, we're big fans here at Development Hell. So I've read it, and hopefully no one else has. So this is all surprise info. But I kind of was wondering if we could start off with the in your article. Jeff Howard mentions that him and Flanagan initially were saying no to the project. Do you
Yeah.
remember why?
Yeah, so they were basically like, look, this is everybody knows the story. It's
Hmm.
what is the point of just telling it again? So and apparently they were kind of pursued. They had to kept saying like no, 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 no.
Yeah. And it's
Uh
not that they weren't fans, right? Like, because they
no, they
they
dug
they
it.
liked it. Yeah.
Yeah, they were I remember him saying like, okay, look, it's no Citizen Kane, but it's
No,
great. It is I
it
think his
is.
line was he said it was really fun. It's a great time out at the movies, but he called it a rock solidly great time.
He's so right.
He
It's
is,
exactly what
yeah,
it is.
and that's and I think as a result, the movie is it's unimpeachable. You can't really knock the film because everything that it wants to do, it does, and it does perfectly.
Mhm.
Yeah, so they were, but so why, if you acknowledge that the movie already kind of nails what it's doing, why bother telling that exact same story? So they kept saying no, 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 no. And eventually, I guess they were kind of wooed over to at least taking a meeting. And and
This is Jeff Howard and Flanagan.
yes, Flanagan and
And
Howard
Howard was
both.
gonna co-write. and Howard was going to co-write and Flanagan was going to co-write and direct.
Yes, yeah, much as they had on their previous films, Flanagan was going to write, or I'm sorry, Flanagan was going to direct, but the script would have been by the two of them as writing partners. And so they both went in, and apparently, presumably Neil Moritz and whoever else was, ultimately going to stand in for the studio or produce the film. They basically pitched the writers like, hey, why don't you just make up a story? Do whatever you want. If it fits with the title, I know what you did last summer, and that kind of feeling, then just do whatever you want. Make up whatever story you want to. And so when that happened, they were both like, okay, well, that could be fun. We don't have to retread what's come before. We don't have to tell the story of Julie James and, the teenagers who hit somebody on a winding road. And, we don't have to do the fisherman. We can just kind of do our own thing as long as it fits with, the tone and the titles. So they kind of went off from there and they came up with their take. And it's funny, in the course of interviewing him, there was kind of this rumor at the time that it wasn't going to simply remake the movie, but they were going back to the Lois Duncan novel. And I remember asking him that. I was like, was that ever a thing? Was it ever going to go back to the novel? And he was like, we didn't even know the novel existed. Like, we didn't even realize, and apparently poor Lois Duncan had contacted them afterwards, once it came out in the trades, and she was actually kind of giddy about it because it was reported to her that it was going to be close to the book. And he was like, oh, so he picked up the book and read it, and he was like, oh shit, like,
it's impossible to do.
yeah, he was like, the book is great, the book is fantastic. Apparently he looked at some of her other titles that she had out there, hoping that he could adapt something else by her, but everything is pretty much locked up. And as he noted, the thing about the book, the thing that you can't adapt is the damned ending, and for, we've talked about the ending, but really to sort of draw a fine line on it, for anyone out there who doesn't mind spoilers for a 50-year-old book, the way I Know What You Did Last Summer ends as a novel is that you find out that two different characters in the book who have not had any contact with one another are in fact the exact same person. So you have this guy who's been pretending to be one guy with Julie, and then you have this guy who has been pretending to be somebody else with, Helen, and it's like it's the same dude. And you can only get away with that in a novel when you're not seeing the people. You can't get away with that in a visual medium. And so no, he was like, we couldn't have adapted the novel even if we wanted to, because there's no way to do that ending. And so, who knows what poor Ms. Duncan would have made of the movie that resulted, but
the outcome, yeah, they said that she probably would not have been happy. No,
yeah. So they, but apparently, what they wanted to do something in the vein of like Agatha Christie. They wanted to do something like, if I had to guess, I don't think he ever actually said any specific titles. He said it wasn't going to be like Poirot, it wasn't going to be Miss Marple, but if I had to guess it, I could probably draw a line between their version of I Know What You Did Last Summer and something like, and then there were none. So it's the idea of like, okay, here's a group of characters and there's a killer, and now we're going to see the characters picked off one by one and who's doing it. So total whodunit. Not really even that much of a slasher, even though there's some grisly set pieces in it.
Yes.
And which I love some of there's one involving, well, I'm sure we'll get to it, but one involving lights and
yeah. You said LED, like solar LED lights with little spikes on them.
Yes,
or something?
that you push into the ground, and instead there's a poor character that gets dispatched with them by having those driven into her, pinning her to the ground until
I love that.
she gets one
so
in the
much.
neck. So you.
Just one, or does she get like in other scary places and then the neck kills her?
Yeah, I think it's like in her legs, in her arms, and then in her neck. And what's cool is that Jeff Howard actually noted that he had hoped, if the movie got made, that the teaser poster could have just been of those lights sticking up out of the ground at weird angles. Like you wouldn't see the body, but you would just see the lights
That's cool. That's very
askew. And
aesthetic.
so, you could look at that poster and be like, oh, what the hell is that? And then you watch the movie and you're like, oh, I get it.
Shit. Cool. I was wondering if you wouldn't mind if we could talk a little bit about what the plot, what the basic setup for this version was. I know that they went with a different direction in terms of the lead character. They went with a guy this time around.
Yeah, there is no. So, in the original story that Lois Duncan told, and also in the 97 film, we have a core group of teen characters. It's Julie James, her best friend Helen, Helen's boyfriend Barry, and then Julie's boyfriend Ray.
Mhm.
And those names felt old even in 97 in a weird way. Like,
How true. Helen and Barry? Come
Helen
on.
and Ray, and it's like,
Ray, yeah.
okay, whatever, it's cool. But
I never thought about that, but that's so real.
yeah. And so, like, okay, in the 70s, fine, but 97, probably not.
No.
Would have been a lot of Dylans around probably at that point.
Yeah, Rachel's. Yeah.
Totally Rachel's, yeah. But yeah, no. So in this one, they decided to flip it and make the lead a guy, and his name is Matt Canton. And so our core group of characters are Matt, his younger sister Lauren, who is actually his adopted sister.
Mhm.
There's a guy named Kyle who's his best friend, and there's
Mhm.
Jenna who is his ex-girlfriend slash kind of best friend. They elected before they exited high school, as it were, and graduated, that life was going to pretty much split them up. So why not go ahead and do the mature thing and go ahead and break up then, but remain really good friends. And so we still have a quartet of characters. It's still summer, of course, but instead of the Croaker Queen Festival in North Carolina, they're actually in Antigua, and they're doing this big like vacation. They're celebrating the summer after graduation, before everybody goes off into the world and to college, and they split up as people do. And so yeah, that it's kind of the similar setup. We have a celebration, we have drinking. In this case, there's drugs, and inevitably somebody has to die to kick off the story. So that story, as it begins, Matt is having a blast, and I remember there's a sequence where it's so weird, but Jenna, his ex, like they're still obviously kind of sweet on one another, but they're again trying to do the adult thing and stay split up. So she starts eyeballing potential, pickups for Matt, like, hey, you should go talk to her, or hey, why don't you get out there and find somebody to talk to? Let's not just hang around together. And he gets the sense that she's doing it altruistically, maybe, but also maybe she kind of wants to go find a guy, and she can't do that if they're kind of
Mhm.
attached at the hip, and she's been eyeballing somebody at the bar. So he kind of gets up and walks away and goes out, and he runs into a girl named Christy. And Christy is trying to escape from this, if I recall correctly, like this alpha male asshole type who is a little more, he was a little pushy when it comes to his interest in her, and she needs somebody like a good guy to step in and save her, basically, right? And
Hmm.
so he does just that, and they wind up hanging out, and they wind up, getting kind of sweet on one another, and as night falls, they all head into this cave system where they have kind of a rave, right?
Mhm.
And his buddy, Kyle, tells him he needs to loosen up. He hands him like a beer or something. Matt drinks it. Thing is, Kyle tells him after he's down the beer that he laced it with something to loosen him up. And so
Not the moment. No.
he is drugged, basically. So he and Christy go off into the cave, and like there's as it's a cave system, there's like the main, we'll say like main cave where everyone is
Entry.
partying, but then there are these smaller caves that people can slip into to do naughty things with one another, and that's definitely what Matt and Christy are interested in doing
Mhm.
at this point in the story. And what's crazy is there's this great sequence, the way it's designed, where the drugs really start to kick in. And so it's like, yeah, it's kind of a sex scene, but it's also hallucinogenic. And it immediately goes from this love scene to Matt being borderline tortured, I think, in a police station, like
Cool.
this Antiguan police
Oh,
station.
yeah.
And so you're dropped immediately into this horrifying situation, much like the lead character is, where he doesn't know what's going on. We don't know what's going on. But what we can gather, like he's covered in blood, the cops who are doing pretty horrendous things, like they're dunking his head underwater. They're trying to get him to admit that he killed this girl. And
Oof.
he's like, what girl, basically. And it turns out poor Christy has been murdered. And he has no recollection. He blacked out when it happened. And he's eventually extradited to the US. He's put in prison. And then 1 year passes. And it turns out that this case has really captured like the media's attention. You think of it like, something like what happened back last fall with Gabby Petito and
Mhm.
her asshole of a boyfriend, which weirdly enough they tracked him down to like 40 minutes from where I'm currently sitting. Anyway,
Whoa.
yeah, it was a weird feeling to have that happening, and then like being like,
Mhm.
I could just run into this person potentially out there. Who knows?
Mhm.
But yeah, no, in the same way, it becomes national news. People become fascinated with the case, and that's kind of spurred on by the fact that there is a very, you remember how everyone was fascinated with Serial, right? That
Yeah,
podcast, the true crime podcast.
of course.
Okay, so and this is where the title comes into play. You find out that Jenna, being an insider who was part of that group, has basically commanded a lot of attention from people who are interested in the case by starting up her own podcast called I Know What You Did Last Summer.
Of
And
course.
that is in part kind of based on, okay, so Christy had a father who was actually like ex-military. He's a stern, like mean-looking dude who looks like he can handle himself, and obviously he didn't take too kindly to his daughter being murdered. And he believes that Matt did it. So he has kind of waged this media war on Matt, and he's given speeches like he's hoping he's being put away for the rest of his life. And anytime he gives a talk to the media, you think of somebody like Ron Goldman's father. That's very much like who this guy seems to be in his anger, but also his willingness to get in front of the cameras and continually call for justice. Um, what he generally signs off on is, looking into the camera and saying, "I know what you did. I know what you did last summer." And so,
Mm.
so yeah, it is kind of like this mantra that keeps going through the film. It isn't merely a note that's given once. So 1 year later, we come to the day of Matt's big trial, and this is it. He's either going to be found not guilty or he's going to prison, and he's actually found not guilty. So he starts getting, very fisherman like messages saying, I know, which makes one think that it's possibly Christie's father, a guy named,
Mhm.
did I say his name already? His name's Donald Stratton.
Okay.
And Stratton has a right hand man who's this, like, uh, I don't know how you would want to say him, but he's very sort of imposing and intimidating in his own right. And his name is Porter. So between Porter sort of threatening Matt on Stratton's behalf, Stratton constantly hounding Matt, Matt is getting these notes saying, I know, I know, I know. On top of all of that, there appears a shadowy figure in a raincoat with a hood that goes over their head. So not quite the fisherman, but not the fisherman. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? It's
Mhm.
just close enough that it's kind of
It's the
a,
same vibe, right?
yeah, I think so. Okay, so it's a little bit of a nod to the fisherman, but it's not the fisherman, right?
Mhm.
And then all of a sudden people start dying, and there is this one. Uh okay, this is a bit of a spoiler. I don't think anyone will hate me for saying this. This is something that I couldn't give in the article, but and I'm not going to give away the ending. I can't give away much more than this, but I will just give one little kernel from the script that I read. Okay, so there's an early sequence where Matt is picked up by Porter, and Porter seems like this kind of well-meaning figure. And then you find out, he's going to give him a ride home. Matt was walking around. He's going to give him a ride home. It's raining, And you find out that Porter is actually Stratton's guy because he drives him out into the middle of nowhere. He pulls him out of the car, he roughs him up, and basically tells him that he needs to come clean and admit to killing Christy, right? So, yeah. So Porter is not a great guy. Now, at this point, the hooded figure in the raincoat has been showing up and basically not doing anything too crazy. Like, there's the notes being left behind. The hooded raincoat figure is kind of like lurking on the edges of the story. But then you find out during one of these terrorizing moments, I forget, I think like maybe the figure throws a brick through Matt's window and it has the I know note on it or whatever. And it turns out it's Porter. Porter is the figure in the raincoat. And you think, oh, so Porter is going to be the killer, like hired by Stratton to do. But then a killer pops up in shadows and basically in this amazing set piece involving a car that is put in drive. It's slowly rolling forward. I believe Porter's, I think Achilles are slashed, so he's crawling away. And there's a messy end for him involving a car and like a yeah, and
like a slow crushing to death via car.
It's something like that. It's
Cool.
grisly, but then the killer basically takes Porter's hooded raincoat, takes it for themselves, and then they go off and then proceed to start knocking people in the cast off in Porter's raincoat. So the entire time when it's just Porter, you think that it's like, oh, this is the killer. It turns out that wasn't the killer at all, but now the killer is actually in the what one imagines would be an iconic raincoat with the hood. So and there are like, it's not necessarily a slasher movie per se. It's not about people getting stabbed or hooked, but there are major, very violent set pieces in the film. There are a lot of red herrings. Like there are moments where it's like, well, clearly, the killer is this person. It's not that person. There are big revelations throughout. And then you get to the ending, and the ending is surprising. Definitely. The big reveal as to who the killer is surprising. And then, their motivation is sort of trotted out as you would get in a whodunit like this. And then the story is resolved, at least in the script that I found. What's funny is when I mentioned this to Jeff Howard, he had an extra part of the story to tell, which was that, okay, and again, I can't, out of respect for them, I can't get deep into spoilers, but let's just say that the script that I ran across had an ending that was fairly traditional, let's say, for a whodunit. The killer is outed, they're dealt with, and then there's the resolution, and then that's it. That's the story. According to Howard, he and Flanagan wrote a much darker, way more fucked up ending than the script that I read. And what had happened was that the studio read it and had a major issue with not only who the killer wound up being, but the final sort of like exclamation point to the end of their script, the final big twist, which, by the way, is the kind of twist that people would have talked about for a long time. It would have been the thing that people would have gone back for second viewings of the movie. It's the sort of thing where you would tell your buddies, like, I'm not going to tell you what it is, but you need to go see this movie before it's ruined for you, right?
Cool.
And they just didn't go for it, and they were told to soften it, and so they did.
Of course.
But unfortunately, when that happened, so too did Flanagan's interest in helming the movie kind of run out. So what happens is that Flanagan was going to direct. He and Howard wrote the script, and so he and Howard were told to water down the ending. And when they did, Flanagan was no longer interested in directing it. And so once you no longer have Mike Flanagan attached as a director, who the hell cares anymore? And so
it kind of falls apart.
And it fell apart, which is just such a damn shame. So to me, like, if I'm those guys, like, oh, we're going to lose our director. Hey, maybe let's go ahead and let them do their damned ending,
I wonder if this was also around the time where Mike Flanagan was really like taken off, and all of a sudden this was kind of like a middling project that he no longer really needed.
This, I think, if I have the timeline right, this is right before Haunting of Hill House. So this is right at that moment where
Okay.
everybody knows he's great, but he hasn't had that major breakthrough. Like,
Hit.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then with, and ever since it's just been like boom, boom, boom,
Yeah.
boom.
Yeah.
So,
He's the king of Netflix now.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I just wish we had physical media releases of his stuff, is all.
Oh, I know. Maybe one of these days. There is one aspect that we haven't touched base on that was in your column that I'm absolutely obsessed with, which was a certain cameo appearance. I'm wondering if we could dig into that a little bit.
Yes. Okay. So in the middle of the movie, there's this great set piece. And I did say that the movie isn't like, it's not a slasher in the way that you would expect it to be a slasher. It is more of a whodunit. It is more of a thriller, but it is punctuated by these really violent moments. But there is one sequence that is 100% a slasher set piece. And so that moment involves this character who is basically the producer for the podcast I Know What You Did Last Summer. So, of course, even just being the producer of the podcast, having anything to do with this case, they get to be drawn on them by the killer. So there's this kind of protracted sequence where she is chased down and she is sort of knocked to the ground. She's crawling away, and I don't know if you're familiar with it. I should say too, the character's name was Kat,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll go ahead and reveal who it was meant to be for anyone who doesn't know after. But yeah, so there is a sequence where she is knocked to the ground. She is crawling away. You have the raincoat wearing killer stalking after her, and you have all of these solar lights. I don't know if you're familiar, but it's
Oh,
kind of like
here we go.
the LEDs with the metal spikes that you press into the ground. And so the killer
Oh.
pulls these up and drives these down into Kat, basically pinning her like a butterfly to the ground. And
Mm.
so, I think it was like legs, arms, and then one in the throat. And so, yeah, it's like you and I were talking about. There was Jeff Howard had this amazing idea for the poster where you would see nothing but the stakes in the ground with the lights on top, but they're kind of disrupted. There's kind of, they're in disarray, and you wouldn't quite know what the deal with that is until you watch the movie, and then you would be like, oh my god, I know what that
I
means
see.
now.
Okay.
So yeah, that
It was
was
this character.
that was
Okay.
going to be Kat. That was the podcast producer. And the idea, apparently, that Howard and Flanagan had as to who should play Kat would have been Jennifer Love Hewitt. They wanted her. They
Incredible.
wrote it for her. It wasn't going to be just a character, like a character
Cameo.
where she was just going to stride in from scene left and exit stage right, and maybe say hello to a couple of people in the meantime.
Mhm.
No, it's a supporting role. She would have had a good couple of scenes. She would have had a little, a meat to the role, something to do, and then she gets to have her own, that's something that we never saw in the original movie.
No.
She was never killed by the killer in those movies, and this actually gave her a big murder set piece that she would have been, put through.
Oh, that would
So
have been super fun
yeah,
to see
it would have been great, and it would have been a neat
Hewitt get
way
it.
to sort of tie it back to the original movies, because apparently the idea that they had was, Howard mentioned the idea of having a universe of these different movies called I Know What You Did Last Summer that do entirely different things with the title and the
Oh,
the basic setup, and in a way that's kind of happened, because if you look at the Amazon Prime show, it's kind of much the same thing. The title is I Know What We Did Last Summer, but the characters are completely different. The story is completely different, and no, I kind of dig that idea. But having Jennifer Love Hewitt cameo in it would have, I think it would have been fun.
the IKWYDLS extended
Yes, I believe
universe.
it's pronounced IKWYDLS. So
IKWYDLS extended universe. Cool. I love it. I like that they didn't go sequel. I like that they went a little more serious. It sounds like this really would have been, I don't know, it really could have energized this franchise in a way that might never happen. So it's quite a shame.
I wish that, and I did ask Jeff Howard about this. I was like, look, can you just call it something else and get it made on
Mm.
its own? And but the thing is, they wrote it for the studio, so the studio, I think, probably owns it. So,
Yeah.
which is a damn shame. But again, as big as Flanagan has gotten, they're just sitting on this great screenplay written by this guy.
Mm-hmm.
So I wish, after Amazon Prime show didn't go anywhere, I wish something would happen with this. I wish, whether it's I Know What You Did Last Summer, or they tweak it a little bit where it's not, but it's still essentially the story that they were trying to tell. They wrote a very smart teenage noir, and that's something that
Mm-hmm.
we don't see a hell of a lot of, at least done very well. And I think there would be an audience for this. I wish it would still get made in some form. And I gotta say, in most cases, when I do these articles, at the end of it, it's inevitably like, I always follow up with the person I'm interviewing, like, so is there any chance that
Yep.
this will actually get made? And 9 times out of 10, they're like, nah, probably not. But in this case, considering how big Flanagan is right now, I feel like if he wanted to do it, he
They've done
probably could at this point. Like, who the hell is going to say no to Mike Flanagan coming back to them and
no
saying,
one.
like, hey, give us our original ending. Let us do what we want with it. You produce, let's go off to Netflix, and everyone will be happy.
Yes. Especially on a streamer where it feels lower stake, they can take bigger
Oh,
risks.
100%. And they would, and I will say that it does. I get it. I almost get the studio's reluctance, given how dark the original ending was meant to be, why they
Mm-hmm.
felt it was going to be, a hit. Me, I
Dangerous.
think it would have been, but I get their reluctance. If you put it
Interesting.
on Netflix, then you shave 15 or 20 million off of the marketing and the prints and all of that jazz, and maybe now, yeah, you could take a bigger swing. I mean, you look at something like the recent Texas Chainsaw Massacre, where I thought it was going to be a
Oh,
watered down slasher
not at
movie
all.
because it was on Netflix,
Not
and
at
then you
all.
watch it and it's like, son of a bitch,
Opposite.
this
It's the opposite.
it never would have gotten into theaters with an R with the amount of violence in it.
Oh, you don't think so?
I mean, it would definitely not in the '90s, back when Jack Palance
No,
was rocking the
no.
MPAA. I
Well,
mean,
do you not to go too far off, but do you think it was more brutal than the 2003 remake? Because that was
yeah,
brutal
it was, but that was. I wonder how much of that was,
at the
okay,
time.
because yeah, here's the thing: you think about 2003, that
Yeah,
remake, it is brutal, but a lot of that, much like the original '74 movie, it's the tone. Like, you don't
that's
see.
really scaring you more than the actual
Yeah, because you're
gore.
not seeing bodies taken apart to a ridiculous degree in the 2003 movie, whereas in the new Netflix movie, I mean,
It's
oh my
gory as fuck.
god, you see people
Yeah, yeah,
impaled on chainsaws and blood spraying down on Leatherface as he charges up the chainsaw. You see him take out a
yep.
bus full of people. You
There's like a
limbs.
prolonged segment of him skinning his mom's face,
Yeah, skinning his mom's face, and then
and the sound really goes for it.
there is so much on-screen violence in that movie that it was kind of astonishing to me, and not even in a way like
Interesting.
with Hooper's Texas Chainsaw 2, where it's done with this very sort of
A
like,
charm.
yeah,
Yeah.
and dark comedy that kind of
God, I love that movie.
leavens it.
Yeah, there's the second one. Although there is that skinning sequence in the second one that is gross as fuck.
True,
Yeah,
true, gross, but again, not like
not mean.
it's Carnival Geek Show. There's a little bit of comedy to it that sort of,
Interesting.
but then you get to something like Jeff Burr's Leatherface in the early '90s, and they cut the living hell out of that movie. Like, nothing got through on that one. It felt like
I've never seen it.
it's a good movie that was chopped to hell, which is, it's got to be frustrating for a filmmaker like that. Or, unfortunately, I mean, he's gone now, but somebody like Wes Craven, who had to battle the MPAA over notes like, we can't give this movie an R rating. The soundtrack is too disturbing. It's like, fuck you.
I have seen the trailer though for number 3, and it's very good.
Yeah, oh my god, yeah, it's one of the great teasers. But no, with the new Texas
Yeah,
Chainsaw, I mean, it's wall to wall violence and gore at points in that
yeah.
movie, and that was kind of astonishing to me. So, you know what? If you can take that kind of big swing on Netflix, there's no reason why Flanagan and Howard's I Know What You Did Last Summer should be denied the ending that they want.
And you're saying it was just dark tonally. It wasn't necessarily grotesque or anything.
No, it's a revelation so you have the whodunit, you get the resolution of that whodunit, so you find out who did it, basically.
Uh-huh.
And then there's just this, and then in the script that I read, that was pretty much it. It's like,
Okay.
okay, the story's over, and good night, folks. And in their original ending, it was just like an extra beat where it was like, oh, by the way, and then boom, we're going to go ahead and pull the rug out from under you and everything you thought about the movie you were just watching.
Was it like a sexual violence issue?
No, not remotely. Nothing like that.
Okay.
It's literally it's a revelation about a character. And it's something
Cool.
that was in front of you the entire story. And I know this sounds like I'm being such a tease on it. And I'm sorry. Like
No. We're lucky that we've gotten what we've gotten.
yeah,
So.
so that's basically it, where you get to the ending and everything resolves, and the whodunit is, you find out who did it and why, and they have their monologue as to why they did it, and then that person is dealt with, and then your story
Okay.
is done, and then there's just this one extra little kapow at the end, and it's
I'm not surprised.
it would have been
Flanagan's
devastating.
full of kapow.
Yeah.
I love being devastated by Flanagan and Friends, so I'm really sad about this. I guess this leads us pretty naturally into conclusion territory, because you were saying it already, because you asked him, yeah, in terms of Jeff Howard, and he thinks maybe this could happen. But do you think, two questions, do you think we're going to get a Fisherman-esque I Know What You Did Last Summer ever again? And do you think it could be this?
Do I think it could be this? No. No, I
Okay.
think the closest we would get, the only interest they had was in doing kind of a light nod to who the fisherman was by having somebody in a slicker with a hood. But I think, even if I remember correctly, the hood was like yellow. So it was kind of like, it was going to be a very different look,
It
but you would
counts, in
still
my
have,
opinion.
like, every good slasher should have an iconic look. And I think,
Did he have a hook?
no, not at all.
I'm okay with that.
No. So, and that's one of the things that was kind of surprising, is like when you see the slicker, it's like, oh, are they going to work in the hook some way? And it's like, nope. So, and I'm fine with that. So if their
Mhm.
version does happen, and again, I honestly think that it could now, but if it does, no, I think it's going to be their own take on that character. It couldn't be the fisherman. Wouldn't even make sense if it were the fisherman.
Mhm.
That said, do I think we're ever going to see that fisherman again?
Yeah.
Probably not. Like, I don't see how you could do it.
You don't think it's not like Ghostface that we're gonna get the fisherman back?
Nah.
I
No,
want him back.
because how do you do it now? Do you do a sequel? Do you do a remake again? Or I
You
just,
bring back Anne Hesh, you take her to some kind of swampy environment, and that's where you start.
Anne Heche was great in that film.
Yeah.
She was better than she had any right to be in that movie.
I love Anne Hesh in that movie. I always talk about jokingly that I have a pitch for a fourth movie, which is just, for some reason, she's in like the Louisiana swamps on, like, those like huts that are kind of like above the water, kind of
Oh yeah.
in the yeah, it's just her in one of those on a rocking chair with a shotgun, and then like a bunch of douchey teens come around in like a in some kind of speedboat, and then there's like a storm and everyone dies. That's my pitch.
I dig it. I dig it. I would watch. Weirdly enough, it's being a writer. Of course, loving so many franchises, I feel like I have my back pocket takes on all of these franchises. Like, if I could only do my Halloween, if I could only do my Texas Chainsaw, and of course, I have my what I would do with I Know What You Did Last Summer. And mine would involve a hook, but not a fisherman. So.
I like having one or the other. I want at least one of the two, personally. I want a little bit of the iconography.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree entirely. I think, yeah, you need a little bit. You don't need everything, I don't think, but just a little bit.
So what do you think's next, if anything, for the I Know What You Did Last Summer franchise?
I
What do you think the move is?
I think it's probably going to take a break,
Okay.
which is a shame, because you know what? After Scream 5's
I
success, like,
know.
now is the
Huge.
time.
This would be the time for it to work
100%.
theatrically, or at least a film form,
Yes, I think now is the time for them to do it, but sadly, I think they're not.
because of the show. Yeah, they're probably spooked. The IP is probably worth less
It's a
now because
little
of the show.
tarnished right now, I think. But then again, we don't know what the viewership is. So maybe nobody saw that. Maybe it wouldn't matter even the least little bit. And maybe,
Maybe it helped. Maybe the fact that that's like stunk up ratings wise gives us a better shot at getting a more traditional retake of the franchise.
yeah. And I mean, when you have Halloween, sort of with its success currently, and when you have Scream coming back roaring, and when the slasher subgenre is really kind of like up again, now is the time. Now is the time to strike with that I know iron.
Mm-hmm.
I just feel like they should, and I just don't know if they will.
I agree with you 100%. Too bad. Jinx, I'm wondering if you wanted to be found by the public, where could they find you?
Okay, so if you want to find me on Twitter, I am at Jinx1981. That's JINX1981. If you want to find me on Instagram, that is Jinx740941. And I'm sorry about that. Otherwise, you can find my work on Bloody Disgusting. I write Phantom Limbs, Larval Ink. Haven't done Mask of Insanity or Blood Ink Staples in quite a while, but maybe I'll get back to this one day. But yeah, primarily Phantom Limbs is what I work on these days. So please check it out and let me know what you think.
I saw there was a Texas Chainsaw one very recently.
I did a Larval Inc. With Adam Marcus and Deborah Sullivan. Larval Inc. is all about, whereas Phantom Limbs is all about horror movie sequels and remakes that were never made. Larval Inc. is all about the earliest versions of movies that were made, but wound up being quite different from their initial drafts. And so I did an interview with Adam Marcus and Deborah Sullivan about their original script for Texas Chainsaw 3D, which was originally called Leatherface 3D. And
Mhm.
let me just tell you, we were robbed
Oh
because
no.
everything that you dislike about Texas Chainsaw 3D is not an issue in their script. Their script
That's too
is
bad.
great. It doesn't have the weird time thing, like it was set in 1993. There's no FaceTime sequence. Uh, it's genuinely scary. It has
Is
characters.
the cousin line still there?
Nope.
That's well, then I don't like it.
Neither is a Floridian telling somebody "Welcome to Texas, motherfucker." That's not in there. Um,
I forgot about that movie
it,
for a little
it's
bit.
it is mean as hell. It has a big heart. Great characters that you give a damn about. Astonishingly brutal sequences of violence, and it
Nice.
feels like a genuine horror epic, like a generational epic. And so it's so sad to read that script and then to see what became of it. And then from that, they had mentioned that they came onto the project after a writer named Steven Susko, who was the writer of The Grudge, and he was the writer director of Unfriended Dark Web, both movies that I really dig.
Mm-hmm.
And apparently they didn't look at his script. They weren't allowed to because Lionsgate wanted them to go as far away from what he did as possible. So me, I'm
Rude.
hearing this and I'm just kind of like, I snapped the pen out and I'm like, thank you. And so I reached out to Steven Susko, and he was generous enough to talk at length about what his take was going to be. And oh, Josh. So he pitched them a trilogy called Leatherface that was going to take place. It was going to start the moment the original Hooper movie ended, like literally moment of. It was going to be shot 16 millimeter handheld.
Oh
Toby
wow.
Hooper and Kim Hinkle both signed off on it. Hooper was going to
Whoa.
direct the second movie of the trilogy, and because they were developing it with Twisted Pictures at the time,
R.I.P.
James Wan was going to direct the initial movie.
Yes,
So
that would have been
he even
amazing.
did concept work for it. Mr. Sesko provided
It's
uh,
a good combo.
oh my god, it would have been great. We have pictures up with Toby Hooper and James Wan holding up James Wan's concept art for what his Leatherface would have looked like.
What year was this? Was this late 2000s or something?
This would have been like mid to late aughts. That was the development period. And James
Okay.
Wan was kind enough to not only give us permission to use the photographs of he and Mr. Hooper in what Steven Susko described as these epic dinners, but in addition to that, he provided a quote where he basically noted that during this time he was attached to Texas Chainsaw, he was attached to Castlevania, he was attached to The Blob, and none of them got made, and he wound up making Insidious instead.
Wow. That's horror history. It's fucking cool as hell.
It was sad because I will say Susko's idea for Leatherface and the backstory and the story that the trilogy would have told, which would have taken place over 3 days, like all of the stuff that he described just sounded like the best. And then we got Texas Chainsaw 3D. So
Yikes. Although the best thing about that movie was that teaser poster with all the different Leatherfaces on it.
oh yeah,
That was fucking cool.
yeah.
Interesting. Well, you know what? Leatherface ain't dead. One of these days, we're gonna get something maybe closer to those lines. But yeah, Jinx, this was a fucking cool ass episode. I love I Know What You Did Last Summer. I think this might be our longest episode yet, which honestly I'm okay with.
It might be. It might be.
But I love it. And thank you, as always, for coming back. We love you here. We're stans.
Of course. Thank you so much.
We're Flana fans. We're Flana fans.
Hell yes. I appreciate it. I always have a blast being on here. So thanks anytime. And, just let me out.
Thank you so much for listening to Development Hell. If you enjoy this podcast, then please do us a major favor of leaving us 5 stars and writing a positive review. It really makes all the difference in the world. We'll see you next week with a brand new episode of Development Hell.
Thank you for listening to the Dread Podcast Network.